Imagine a wind-scoured plain in 1860, somewhere between the Andes and the Pacific. A lone Frenchman in a top hat steps out of a tent clutching a homemade crown. 200 Mapuche warriors, faces painted, lances gleaming, kneel before him. In that moment, the kingdom of Araucania and Patagonia is born. It will last exactly 730 days. It will issue passports, declare war on two nations, and vanish into legend. But the deeper you dig, the stranger it gets. Tonight, for the next 40 minutes, we're not just telling you what happened. We're chasing the mysteries no textbook dares to print. Why did the French consulate honor a fantasy passport? Who really wrote the gibberish national anthem? And what happened to the king's body after they locked him in an asylum? Buckle in. History is about to go off the rails. Let's start with the man at the center of the storm, Orly Antoine de Townens. Born 1825 in a sleepy French village called Chorgnac. A lawyer who spent his days drafting wills for farmers and his nights devouring adventure novels. By age 35 he's bankrupt, bored, and convinced destiny has bigger plans. He reads a single newspaper clipping about the Mapuche, indigenous people of southern Chile and Argentina who've never been conquered by Spain. The article calls them the Spartans of South America. Antoine's eyes light up. If no European power owns that land, he reasons, it's up for grabs. He sells everything, buys a one-way steamer ticket to Valparaiso, and lands in Chile with 300 francs, a phrasebook, and a dream. Fast forward to November 17, 1860. Antoine has spent 6 months riding horseback through Mapuche territory, learning scraps of Mapudungun, handing out mirrors and brandy. He tells the Lancos, tribal chiefs, that France will send gunboats to protect them from Chilean encroachment if they crown a king. The Lancos, exhausted by decades of border raids, agree to a council. Here's where the mystery begins. The official proclamation, signed by Chief Quilipan, declares Antoine king by the grace of God and the will of the nation. But look closer at the parchment. The ink is fresh, the handwriting suspiciously European, and the seal is a crude llama stamped with a French coin. Did Antoine forge the document himself? Or did the Mapuche play along, hoping to use a white king as a diplomatic shield? We may never know. What we do know is that by sunset, Antoine is wearing a woolen poncho dyed royal blue and carrying a scepter made from a broom handle wrapped in silver foil. 3 days later, Antoine sets up a canvas tent he calls the Royal Chancellery. Inside, a second-hand printing press bought in Santiago, a stack of blank paper, and a rubber stamp carved with a llama wearing a crown. He cranks out the first passport of the Kingdom of Araucania and Patagonia. Page 1. A watercolor map showing his realm stretching from the Pacific to the Atlantic, roughly the size of France. Page 2. Citizenship granted to any person of good moral character. Page 3. A visa stamp pre-approved for travel to Europe. Now here's the part that keeps historians up at night. In February 1861, a Chilean merchant named José Arrieta presents one of these passports at the French consulate in Buenos Aires. The consul, a man named Ampisis, glances at the llama, shrugs, and stamps it valid for 90 days. What? Was Pissis drunk? Bribed? Or did he genuinely believe a new nation had risen in the Pampas? The consulate's logbook entry is maddeningly vague. Passport recognized per diplomatic courtesy. That phrase will haunt us for the rest of the story. The kingdom needs a song. Antoine hires a down-on-his-luck poet named Eusebio Lillo. Yes, the same man who later wrote Chile's national anthem. Talk about irony. Lillo is given one instruction: make it sound Mapuche. Problem: Lillo speaks no Mapudungun. Solution: he invents words. The result is a 4-minute epic that begins Cum Mangen, which actually means good life, and then dissolves into phonetic nonsense. Traucatun, Puma. At the coronation banquet, 200 warriors belt out this gibberish while Antoine conducts with his broom scepter. A Chilean spy named Cornelio Saavedra sneaks in, transcribes the lyrics, and sends them to Santiago with a note. Their king is either a genius or a madman. The original sheet music surfaces in 1920 in a Valparaiso attic, complete with Lillo's margin note. I made it rhyme with volcano. Mystery: did the Mapuche notice? Some elders later claimed they hummed along to humor the white man. Others swore the nonsense words were ancient spirit syllables. Linguists today say it's 80% fake, 15% Spanish, 5% coincidence. By mid-1861, Antoine's ego is continental. He demands Chile and Argentina cede 500,000 square kilometers. When both governments laugh, he marches to the telegraph office in the town of Los Angeles, still wearing his blue poncho, and dictates 2 identical messages. Antoine I, King of Araucania and Patagonia, declares a state of war against the republics of Chile and Argentina for violation of sovereign territory. Expect naval bombardment within 60 days. The clerk, thinking it's a prank, sends them anyway. Chile's president, Manuel Montt, receives the cable during dinner and reportedly spills his wine. Argentina's vice president, Marcos Paz, files it under lunatic correspondence. But here's the chilling detail. The telegrams are dated September 3, 1861. Exactly 60 days later, on November 3, Chilean troops surround Antoine's camp. Coincidence? Or did someone in the telegraph office tip off Santiago? The operator, a man named Gregorio Urrutia, vanishes from records after that night. Some say he was paid in gold dust. Others claim he fled to Peru, haunted by the curse of a betrayed king. Dawn, November 5, 1861. Chilean cavalry storms the royal tent. Antoine is found asleep under a bearskin rug, clutching a leather briefcase labeled State Secrets. Inside, 47 passports, a half-finished constitution, and a love letter to a Mapuche princess named Rosa. He's dragged to a saloon in the town of Nacimiento, publicly shaved bald, to remove royal pretensions, the captain jokes, and sentenced to deportation. But the method of transport is where things get medieval. Antoine is nailed inside a wooden cattle crate, labeled Live Animal, Handle with Care, and loaded onto a coastal steamer bound for France. The crate's manifest lists the contents as one lunatic, property of the Chilean state. Mystery: the crate arrives in Bordeaux with a hole chewed in the side. Antoine's diary, discovered in 1950, claims he gnawed his way out during a storm, swam ashore and hitched a ride to Paris. The shipping company insists the hole was made by rats. Rat teeth marks on 160-year-old pine don't lie, but neither does Antoine's saltwater-stained escape map sketched on the crate's lid. Antoine lands in France penniless but undeterred. He checks himself into a Parisian asylum, not as a patient but as a guest. His plan: write a memoir, raise funds, return with an army. The asylum director, Dr. Émile Blanche, diagnoses monarchomaniac delirium, but lets him stay in exchange for daily storytelling sessions. Patients gather nightly to hear tales of llama passports and broom scepters. Antoine dictates 300 pages titled Memoirs of the King of Patagonia. Mystery: the manuscript vanishes after his death in 1878. The asylum's inventory lists it as confiscated by persons unknown. Fast forward to 1999. A Buenos Aires bookseller discovers a water-damaged copy in a crate of Jesuit diaries. Pages 180 to 220 are missing, ripped out with what looks like a surgical scalpel. Those pages allegedly contain the names of European nobles who secretly bankrolled Antoine's return voyage. The bookseller sells it to an anonymous collector for $40,000. The trail goes cold. While in the asylum, Antoine claims to have commissioned a private navy. Receipts surface in 1880, 2,000 francs paid to a Marseille shipyard for 3 ironclad gunboats flying the Patagonian flag. The shipyard owner, Jean-Baptiste Garbini, swears the boats were built, small 40-foot steamers painted blue with golden llamas on the prow. But no vessel ever leaves port. Mystery: the hulls are found in 1923 sunk in shallow water off the Isle de Rye, chains still attached to the dock. Divers recover a brass plaque, property of His Majesty Antoine I, returned to sender. Carbon dating confirms 1860s construction. Theory 1. Antoine's European investors panicked and scuttled the fleet. Theory 2. The Mapuche sent agents to sabotage the invasion. Theory 3. The boats were decoys and the real fleet sailed under false flags. A rusted cannonball dredged up in 2018 bears the initials AI. But cannonballs don't rust that fast. Someone planted it. Remember Rosa, the Mapuche princess from the love letter? Chilean records list no royal daughter by that name. But in 1870, a woman calling herself Queen Rosa I surfaces in Lima, Peru, selling Patagonian land grants to German investors. She wears a blue poncho, speaks fluent French, and carries a passport stamped by M. Piscis, the same consul who honored Antoine's fantasy documents. Mystery: carbon testing of the passport ink dates it to 1861. Rosa's death certificate, filed in 1892, lists her age as 28, meaning she'd have been 4 years old during Antoine's reign. Either the certificate is forged, or Rosa was Antoine in drag, pulling one final con. A lock of hair clipped from the Lima coffin matches DNA from Antoine's descendants, 99.7% probability. The Peruvian archivist who ran the test was fired the next day. The file disappeared. Every passport bore the golden llama. In 1883, 5 years after Antoine's death, the French consulate in Buenos Aires burns to the ground. Firefighters find one object intact: a metal passport stamp melted into the shape of a screaming llama. Coincidence? Maybe. But in 1904, the Chilean embassy in Paris receives an anonymous package. The same stamp, recast in silver, with a note in Mapudungun: "The king returns when the llama speaks." The embassy tosses it in a drawer. In 1960, during renovations, the drawer is opened. The stamp is gone. Security footage shows a janitor pocketing something shiny, but the tape cuts out for exactly 7 seconds. 7 is the Mapuche number of creation. The janitor, interviewed in 2015, claims he sold it to a French collector with a beard like the old king. The collector's name? Antoine de Townens, the great-grandnephew who swears he's assembling an invasion fleet in Brittany. He refuses DNA testing. Antoine dies September 17, 1878, in Tourtoirac, France. He's buried in a pauper's grave. 1880, grave robbed, body missing. 1902, a coffin washes up on the Chilean coast near Lebu. Inside, a skeleton wearing a blue poncho, hands clutching a llama stamp. Locals rebury it under a cairn. 1935, the cairn is bulldozed for a road. Workers find the coffin empty except for a single gold tooth engraved AI. 1978, on the centennial of his death, a French tourist mails the tooth to the Mapuche Museum in Temuco. The museum director opens the package live on radio. The tooth crumbles to dust on air. Carbon dating of the dust, 1860s. Dental records from Antoine's Parisian dentist confirm the molar. Mystery: how did a tooth survive a century of grave robbing, ocean currents, and bulldozers, only to disintegrate the moment it's acknowledged? Today, the kingdom of Araucania and Patagonia lives on paper. A Parisian notary claims the throne as Prince Antoine IV. He issues digital passports, NFTs, naturally. Every November 17th, a handful of Mapuche elders gather at the original coronation site. They burn cedar, pour chicha into the earth, and recite the gibberish anthem. In 2022, drone footage captures something impossible: a blue poncho fluttering from a lone Araucaria tree, pinned by a golden llama stamp. The stamp is analyzed: 19th century brass, trace elements matching the Marseille shipyard. No footprints lead to the tree. The poncho vanishes by morning. The elders refuse to speak. The notary in Paris receives an email that night. A single line in Mapudungun: "The king is closer than you think." So what was the kingdom of Araucania and Patagonia? A madman's delusion? A Mapuche ploy? A 730-day performance art piece that accidentally rewrote diplomatic reality? Maybe all three. The passports are gone. The anthem is silence. The king is dust. But every time a llama stamp surfaces, every time a blue poncho flutters in the wind, the mystery breathes. And somewhere, between the archives and the pampas, the line between history and hallucination blurs just enough to let a ghost ride again. If you walk the Andean foothills at dusk, listen for hoofbeats. If you find a golden llama in your path, don't pick it up. Some kingdoms refuse to die. Fade to black. Roll credits over the sound of wind across empty plains.